The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. It was silver and smooth, 5 times larger than the biggest human spacecraft ever built. News of its arrival spread quickly. People around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky, even though the ship was only visible through telescopes. In Washington, D.C., Admiral Peter Ross rushed through the halls of the United Earth Defense Headquarters. His uniform was freshly pressed, but worry lines marked his face. Beside him walked Susan Miller, Earth's top diplomat, her calm expression hiding her racing thoughts. "What do we know about them?" Susan asked, keeping pace with the Admiral's long strides. "Almost nothing," Peter replied. "They broadcast a single message in perfect English. They call themselves the Galactic Assembly. They want to talk." The conference room was filled with military personnel and government officials when they arrived. On the large screen at the front of the room was the first image of an alien ever seen by human eyes. The creature had blue-tinted skin, 4 arms, and large eyes that blinked sideways. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly musical. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Galactic Assembly, a coalition of 17 spacefaring species. We have been observing your civilization for some time. Your rapid advancement has impressed us. We wish to invite you to join our community of worlds." 3 days later, Susan Miller and a small team of diplomats boarded a shuttle to the alien ship. Admiral Ross went with them, along with 4 security officers who tried to hide their nervousness. The shuttle journey was short but felt very long. The inside of the alien ship was beautiful. The walls glowed with soft light, and the air smelled like spring flowers. They were greeted by representatives from 5 different species. The leader was Zathar, the blue-skinned alien they had seen on the screen. "Welcome," Zathar said, extending his upper right hand. Susan shook it, finding his skin cool and smooth. "We are pleased to begin formal relations with Earth." Over the next few days, Susan and her team learned about the assembly. It had existed for over 8,000 years. Member species shared technology, resources, and cultural knowledge. They had eliminated war within their borders centuries ago. Their territory spanned thousands of star systems. "Your civilization has developed remarkably fast," said Ilara, a small reptilian diplomat. "Most species take twice as long to reach your level of technology." Admiral Ross noticed something in her tone. "You sound concerned about that." The alien representatives exchanged glances. "We admire humanity's innovation," Zathar said carefully, "but your history contains much conflict. Your most significant technological advances often came during or because of warfare." Susan leaned forward. "That's true, but we've made great progress toward peace. The United Earth government has maintained global stability for 40 years. Yet you maintain military forces," said another alien, a tall being with silver fur. "You build warships even in peacetime." "For defense," Admiral Ross said. "The universe is unknown to us. We wanted to be prepared." This seemed to trouble the Assembly representatives. By the end of the week, the Assembly offered Earth membership, but with conditions. Earth would undergo a 5-year probationary period before becoming a full member. During this time, humans could visit Assembly worlds and learn their technologies, but certain restrictions would apply to military development. As Susan Miller signed a preliminary agreement, she felt proud of this historic achievement. But later, in the privacy of their shuttle returning to Earth, Admiral Ross expressed his doubts. "Did you notice how they kept coming back to our military history? How they studied our responses when they mentioned warfare?" Susan nodded slowly. "They're afraid of something." "Yes," Ross said, looking out at the stars. "And I don't think it's just our history they're concerned about. I think they're afraid of what we might become." 5 years passed since Earth joined the Galactic Assembly as a probationary member. Humans now worked alongside aliens on many worlds. They learned new technologies and shared their own ideas. Most people believed the relationship was going well. Lieutenant John Baker did not share this belief. He worked in communications on the assembly station orbiting Jupiter. His job was to sort and translate messages between Earth and assembly worlds. Most messages were boring. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific data. But sometimes John found odd gaps in the transmission logs. One night, while most of the station slept, John decided to investigate these gaps. He used his security clearance to access restricted communication channels. What he found made his blood run cold. The assembly had been studying humans all along, not as friends or partners, but as potential threats. John downloaded the secret files to his personal device and left his post early, claiming illness. Back in his quarters, John read the classified reports. Assembly scientists had been watching how humans behaved in various situations. They noted how quickly humans adapted to new challenges. They measured how humans responded to stress and conflict. The reports used words like concerning and potentially destabilizing. One report stood out. It compared human military thinking to that of other species. The assembly scientists seemed shocked that humans continued developing weapons even during times of peace. No other species in the assembly did this. The report called humans uniquely prepared for warfare and instinctively strategic. John didn't sleep that night. The next morning, he sent an encrypted message to Susan Miller, now Earth's ambassador to the assembly. 3 days later, they met in a quiet corner of the station's garden dome. Susan brought her aide, William Clark, a young man with sharp eyes and a quick mind. "Are you sure about this?" Susan asked after John explained what he found. John nodded. "They're not evaluating us for membership. They're assessing if we're dangerous." William frowned. "But why? The assembly has overwhelming technological advantages. Earth is hardly a threat." "It's not our technology they fear," John said. "It's something about us, about how we think." Susan considered this. "We need to understand why they're so concerned. We need more information." They formed a plan. Susan would use her diplomatic access to gather intelligence from assembly officials. William would search historical records for clues about the assembly's past. John would continue monitoring communications for more secret reports. William's research yielded surprising results first. The assembly's official history claimed they had always been peaceful, but he found references to ancient conflicts that had been carefully erased from public records. They've been hiding their own violent past, William told Susan and John during their next secret meeting. It's as if they're ashamed of it. Meanwhile, Susan noticed how assembly representatives reacted when she brought up hypothetical conflict scenarios during diplomatic discussions. They seemed not just reluctant to discuss warfare, but genuinely uncomfortable with the concept. They don't just dislike war, Susan realized. They don't understand it anymore. John's monitoring revealed more classified studies. Assembly scientists had been particularly interested in human military history. They studied everything from ancient Roman battle tactics to modern naval strategies. They seemed both fascinated and horrified by humanity's creativity in warfare. "I think I understand now," Susan said during their third meeting. "They fear us because we remember what they've forgotten. We still know how to fight." "But why would that matter?" William asked. "The assembly has been at peace for centuries. They control thousands of worlds." Just then, John's communication device beeped. He checked the message and his face went pale. "Something's happening," he said. "An unknown species has attacked an assembly world near the outer boundary. They're calling them the Krell." Susan's expression turned grave. "And how is the assembly responding?" John looked up from his device. "That's just it. They don't seem to know how to respond. Their defense forces haven't fought a real battle in generations. So that's why they fear us," William whispered. "Because they might need us." The news about the Krell spread quickly. Reports showed their ships destroying everything in their path. They didn't communicate or make demands. They simply attacked and moved on to the next world. The assembly called an emergency meeting. Susan Miller, John Baker, and William Clark attended as Earth representatives. The large meeting room was filled with aliens from all 17 member species. Fear hung in the air like a heavy fog. The Krell have destroyed 3 outer colonies, announced Zathar, now the Assembly's high speaker. They show no interest in talks. Their only goal seems to be destruction. Images appeared on the large screen. Susan gasped. The Krell ships were black and jagged, like pieces of shattered glass moving through space. The footage showed them firing on civilian settlements without warning. What is the Assembly's plan? Susan asked. Zathar looked uncomfortable. Our defense fleet is moving to intercept them, but... He paused. We have not faced a true enemy in over 500 years. John leaned close to Susan. Their fleet is mostly for show. They've forgotten how to fight. A new alert sounded. Everyone turned to the screen. A Krell fleet had just been detected near Saturn. They were heading toward Earth. They're in our solar system, William whispered. Admiral Ross, who was watching from Earth, immediately called Susan on a private channel. His face appeared on her small screen. I've seen the reports, he said. The Assembly defenses are useless. They have better technology, but no battle experience. I'm mobilizing our fleet. The Assembly won't like that, Susan warned. We're still under probation. I don't care what they like. I care about protecting our people. Back in the meeting room, Zathar was still discussing options when Susan stood up. Earth is activating its defense forces, she announced. The room fell silent. We have 27 warships ready to deploy. Admiral Ross is taking command now. Protests erupted around the room. That violates your probation terms. One alien shouted. Earth is not permitted to engage in military action without Assembly approval, said another. Susan faced them calmly. The Krell are 8 hours from Earth. We don't have time for approval. She turned to Zathar. High Speaker, your people have forgotten what we still remember. You've had peace for so long that you've lost the ability to defend yourselves. But humans remember war. We know its cost, and we know how to fight. The room grew quiet. Zathar looked at Susan with new understanding in his eyes. What do you suggest, Ambassador Miller? Let Admiral Ross coordinate with your defense fleet. Follow his lead. Some Assembly members objected, but as more reports of Krell destruction came in, they reluctantly agreed. Earth's small fleet would join the Assembly's larger but inexperienced forces. Admiral Ross wasted no time. He set up a command center on Earth and began issuing orders to both human and Assembly ships. The Assembly captains were confused by his strategies at first. Why divide our forces? One asked. Shouldn't we concentrate all ships to maximize firepower? That's what they'll expect, Ross explained. We need to be unpredictable. As the Krell approached, the Assembly members watched in amazement as Earth prepared for war. Civilians moved to shelters. Military reserves were called up. Factories shifted to producing weapons and supplies. Your entire planet is mobilizing, Zathar observed to Susan. Even your children know what to do. We've faced war throughout our history, Susan said. We've never forgotten its lessons. The first reports from the front lines were devastating. The Assembly ships, despite their advanced technology, fell quickly to the Krell. Their captains lacked tactical thinking. They fought by the book, with no creativity or adaptation. Earth's smaller fleet showed more success. The human captains used unexpected maneuvers. They sacrificed ships to gain advantages. They fought with a ferocity that surprised even the Krell. Now you see, Susan told Zathar as they watched the battle reports. This is why you feared us. Because deep down, you knew someday you would need what we are. The war against the Krell grew worse each day. The Assembly ships had better weapons and shields, but their crews fought without passion or creativity. They followed old battle plans that didn't work against the savage Krell attacks. Earth's forces fought differently. Admiral Ross organized them into small, quick groups that struck hard and then disappeared. They couldn't match the Krell's power, but they confused them with unexpected moves. Captain Lisa Wright commanded the UES Determination, one of Earth's newest warships. Her crew was young and scared, but determined. They had already survived 2 battles when they received orders to defend a mining colony near Jupiter. The Krell have 3 capital ships heading toward the colony. Admiral Ross told Lisa during their secure call. We can't match their firepower. Then we won't try to match it, Lisa replied. We'll do what they don't expect. The Determination reached the mining colony first. Lisa positioned her ship behind one of Jupiter's small moons. She ordered the crew to shut down all systems except basic life support. They waited in cold darkness as the massive Krell ships approached. They're scanning for us, whispered Sam Gordon, Lisa's second in command. Will they find us? Not if we stay quiet, Lisa said, like hunters in the forest. The Krell ships moved closer to the colony. Lisa watched their formation. 3 huge vessels shaped like black arrowheads, surrounded by smaller fighter craft. The miners on the colony had only basic defenses. They wouldn't last 5 minutes. Ready all weapons, Lisa ordered. Prepare for maximum engine burn. Her crew looked at her with confusion. Captain, we can't take on 3 capital ships, Sam said. We're not going to fight them, Lisa explained. We're going to make them fight each other. The Determination burst from its hiding place with all engines firing. It raced toward the space between 2 Krell ships. The enemy responded slowly, surprised by the sudden appearance of the human vessel. Fire missiles at the lead ship's engines, Lisa commanded. Then immediate turn toward the second ship. The Determination's missiles hit the first Krell vessel. As expected, it turned to pursue them. Lisa's ship banked hard and flew straight at the second Krell ship. The enemy captain panicked and tried to move aside, but Lisa had calculated her approach perfectly. Now, she shouted. The Determination fired all remaining missiles at the second ship, then dove underneath it. The first Krell ship, still in pursuit, couldn't stop in time. Its weapons, already firing, hit the second ship instead of the Determination. The second ship returned fire automatically. In the chaos, the 2 Krell ships damaged each other severely. The third ship tried to help but got caught in the crossfire. The Determination was hit multiple times and lost its main engines, but Lisa had achieved her goal. Send the signal, she told Sam. She could barely hear her own voice over the alarms blaring throughout the ship. The Determination sent a message to Admiral Ross with their location and situation. Within an hour, 3 human ships and 2 assembly vessels arrived to finish the damaged Krell fleet. It was the first major victory against the Krell. News of it spread quickly across Earth and assembly worlds. The assembly leaders were shocked by Lisa's tactics. She deliberately used her ship as bait, one assembly official said during an emergency meeting. She knew her vessel would be damaged. She knew the colony would be destroyed if she didn't, Susan Miller replied. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. Admiral Ross received a message from the Assembly Council. It was brief and to the point. We request Earth's full military involvement in this conflict. What do you require? Ross didn't hesitate. I need complete command authority over all forces. No restrictions. No second guessing. The Assembly representatives looked at each other nervously. What Ross asked for was unprecedented, but they had seen the reports from the battle at Jupiter. They had witnessed what humans could do. Granted, the Assembly Council finally agreed. That evening, families across Earth gathered around dinner tables to discuss the war news. In military bases, officers studied Krell tactics and planned new strategies. Everyone understood what was happening. Humanity was becoming the weapon the Assembly had feared. Admiral Ross wasted no time. Once he gained command of the combined forces, he immediately began reshaping how the Assembly military operated. The changes were difficult for many alien crews to accept. You must be willing to attack when the enemy least expects it, Ross explained to a room full of Assembly ship captains. Forget the old rules of engagement. The Krell don't follow them. Captain Paul Harris, a quiet man with steady hands, became one of Admiral Ross's most trusted officers. Paul studied the Krell battle patterns and found something interesting. They fight like machines, he told Admiral Ross. Always the same moves in the same order. They don't adapt when their plans fail. Paul developed new tactics based on this weakness. He trained both human and assembly crews to recognize Krell patterns and disrupt them. His methods were unusual but effective. Meanwhile, Susan Miller made a discovery of her own. She convinced Zathar to give her access to the oldest assembly historical records, ones not available to the public. "I want to understand why your people forgot how to fight," she explained. What she found shocked her. Thousands of years ago, the assembly species had been fierce warriors, just like humans. But after a terrible war nearly destroyed their civilization, they'd made a choice. They changed themselves. Susan brought her findings to Admiral Ross and John Baker. They altered their own biology and culture, she explained. They removed their capacity for aggression. It took many generations, but eventually they created a truly peaceful society. "And that's why they feared us," John said. "Because we still have what they engineered out of themselves. They sacrificed their ability to fight in exchange for lasting peace," Susan said. "It worked for thousands of years. Until they met the Krell," Admiral Ross finished. "As the war continued, Earth became the center of military operations. Human factories worked day and night producing weapons and ships. Children learned emergency procedures in schools. Civilian ships were converted for battle. The entire planet focused on one goal: survival." Assembly representatives watched with a mixture of awe and horror as human society transformed. The speed of the change amazed them. Humans seemed to become more efficient, more focused, more dangerous with each passing day. "Your people embrace war so easily," Zathar said to Susan during a rare quiet moment. "Does this not concern you?" Susan looked out the window at the ships being prepared for battle. "We don't embrace war, High Speaker. We just remember it. We carry the knowledge in our blood." On the front lines, Captain Paul Harris led a small fleet of mixed human and assembly ships. He trained the alien crews personally, teaching them concepts they had forgotten generations ago. Deception, surprise, the value of sacrifice. "Sometimes you must lose a battle to win the war," he explained to his confused assembly officers. "Sometimes you must risk everything on one bold move." Slowly, the assembly crews began to understand. They watched how the humans fought and learned from them. Some even began to show small signs of the warriors their ancestors had once been. Gregory Powell, a human engineering specialist, developed new weapons designed specifically to target Krell biology. When he presented his designs to the Assembly Science Council, several members left the room, disturbed by the deliberate intent to cause harm. "This goes against everything we believe," one council member protested. "I understand," Gregory said simply. "But belief won't stop the Krell." Admiral Ross approved the new weapons without hesitation. Under his leadership, the combined fleet began to win more battles than they lost. The Krell advance slowed, then stopped. As news of victories spread, humans celebrated. They held parties and gave medals to their heroes. This behavior confused the assembly representatives. "You seem happy, despite all the death and destruction," Zathar said to Admiral Ross. "Not happy," Ross corrected. "Relieved. And proud of what our people have accomplished together." "I begin to understand now," Zathar said quietly. "You don't fear war because you're afraid of dying. You fear war because you know how easily you turn to it, how good you are at it." Admiral Ross didn't answer. He didn't need to. The evidence was all around them. 8 months into the war, intelligence reports indicated that the main Krell fleet was gathering near Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to Earth. Admiral Ross knew this would be their chance to deal a decisive blow to the enemy. "They're planning something big," he told his commanders during a strategy meeting. "We need to hit them before they're ready." The combined human assembly fleet consisted of over 200 ships. It was the largest military force assembled in this part of the galaxy in thousands of years. Admiral Ross would lead from his flagship, the UES Valiant. Captain Paul Harris would command the fast attack group, responsible for disrupting Krell formations. Captain Lisa Wright, now recovered from her injuries, would lead the main assault force. Assembly ships would provide support with their superior shielding technology. The night before the fleet departed, Susan Miller visited Admiral Ross in his office. He was studying battle plans, his face tired but determined. "The Assembly Council is nervous about this offensive," Susan said. "They're worried about the number of ships we're committing." Ross looked up from his maps. "If we lose, there won't be enough ships left to defend Earth anyway. Sometimes you have to risk everything." "I know," Susan said. "I just wanted to say, be careful out there." The journey to Proxima Centauri took 3 days. The human assembly fleet moved silently through space, using minimal power to avoid detection. When they arrived, sensors showed the Krell fleet was even larger than expected. 317 ships, reported Sam Gordon, now serving as communications officer on the Valiant. "We're outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything," Admiral Ross replied. "Everyone knows the plan. Let's begin." The battle started with Paul Harris's fast attack group striking the outer edges of the Krell formation. As predicted, the Krell responded by sending ships to chase them. This created gaps in their defenses. Captain Lisa Wright led her group through one of these gaps, targeting the Krell command ships. The assembly vessels provided cover, absorbing heavy fire with their advanced shields. Admiral Ross coordinated the entire battle from the Valiant. He moved forces quickly, never staying in one formation long enough for the Krell to adapt. The battle raged for hours, with losses on both sides. "The Krell flagship is changing position," Sam reported. "They're trying to escape." "Not today," Ross said. "Direct all available ships to cut off their retreat." Ross's order spread across the human assembly fleet. Ships changed course, focusing their attacks on the Krell flagship and its escorts. The Krell responded with desperate fury, concentrating fire on the Valiant. The bridge of the Valiant shook as the ship took multiple hits. Warning alarms blared as systems began to fail. "Admiral, we've lost engines," Sam shouted over the noise. "Shields failing." Ross remained calm. "Continue targeting the Krell flagship. All other ships maintain attack pattern Delta." The Valiant took another direct hit. Part of the bridge collapsed, injuring several crew members. Ross helped a young officer to safety before returning to the command station. "Sir, we need to evacuate," Sam urged. "The ship can't take much more." "Not until our job is done," Ross replied. He opened a channel to all ships. "This is Admiral Ross. The Krell flagship is vulnerable. All units converge and fire everything you have." The combined firepower of the human assembly fleet finally overwhelmed the Krell flagship's defenses. The massive black vessel exploded in a blinding flash. Without central command, the remaining Krell ships fell into disarray. "Sir, the enemy is retreating," Sam reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "We've won." Admiral Ross allowed himself a small smile before another explosion rocked the Valiant. The command console erupted in sparks. "Abandon ship," Ross ordered calmly. "Get everyone to the escape pods." As crew members rushed to evacuate, Ross stayed at his post, ensuring all available ships pursued the retreating Krell. Only when the last escape order was confirmed did he head for the pods himself. The Valiant broke apart just minutes after the last pod launched. From his small escape craft, Admiral Ross watched his flagship dissolve into burning fragments against the darkness of space. The battle was over. The human assembly fleet had achieved victory, but at terrible cost. Nearly 40% of their ships were destroyed or severely damaged. Thousands of lives were lost, both human and alien. Yet across the fleet, a sense of triumph spread. They had faced the Krell's main force and won. For the first time since the war began, there was real hope. The victory at Proxima Centauri changed the war. For the first time, the Krell were on the defensive. Their main fleet was scattered, and they retreated from several conquered worlds. The Assembly celebrated this turn of events, but Admiral Ross knew the war was far from over. "We've won a battle, not the war," he told the Assembly Council. We need to press our advantage while we have it. Ross was right. Within weeks, the Krell regrouped and adapted their tactics. They avoided large fleet engagements and instead attacked smaller targets with overwhelming force. Supply lines were disrupted. Isolated colonies fell silent. As the conflict continued, humans gained more influence within the Assembly military structure. Their natural talent for warfare earned them leadership positions despite their probationary status. Earth officers commanded mixed crews of humans and aliens. Assembly ship captains studied human military history and strategy. John Baker, now promoted to commander, led a special team of human and Assembly intelligence officers. Their mission was to gather information on Krell territory and find their homeworld. If we can strike at their home, we might end this war, John explained to his team. But first we need to find it. John's team used captured Krell ships to move through enemy space undetected. They mapped Krell supply routes and listening posts. One by one, they pieced together a path back to the Krell home system. After 3 dangerous months, John returned with the information. His ship was damaged, and half his team was lost, but he had succeeded. There, John said, pointing to a star on the holographic map. That's their homeworld. It's surrounded by defense platforms and at least 100 ships. Admiral Ross studied the map carefully. This won't be easy, but it's our best chance. The Assembly Council was divided on the plan. Some members argued for a defensive strategy, focusing on protecting their own worlds. Others saw the opportunity to end the war with one decisive strike. Susan Miller, now serving as Earth's official ambassador to the Assembly, addressed the Council. For thousands of years, you chose peace. You removed war from your nature, and that was a noble choice, she said. But now you face an enemy that only understands destruction. Sometimes, to preserve peace, we must be willing to wage war. The council chambers fell silent. Susan's words challenged everything the Assembly believed about itself. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Miller? Asked Zathar. A full-scale attack on the Krell homeworld, Susan replied. We will need every ship, every weapon we have. Some council members gasped at the suggestion. That would mean billions of deaths, one protested. Yes, Susan said simply. It would. For 3 days, the council debated the plan. In the end, they approved it with reluctance. The combined human assembly fleet would launch an all-out assault on the Krell homeworld. Admiral Ross, recovered from his injuries, took personal command of the operation. Captain Paul Harris would lead the main attack force. Gregory Powell provided new weapons specifically designed to target Krell planetary defenses. The battle plan was brutal but effective. Human tactics shaped every aspect of the assault. Deception, concentration of force, and calculated sacrifice, concepts that would have horrified the Assembly a year earlier, were now central to their strategy. As the fleet prepared to depart, Assembly representatives watched with a mixture of hope and dread. They had come to rely on humanity's warrior spirit, but they also feared what it represented. We've changed you, Zathar said to Susan as they observed ships loading weapons and supplies. We feared what you might become, and now we've helped make you even more dangerous. Susan shook her head. You haven't changed us, High Speaker. You've simply allowed us to be what we always were, what we've always had to be. And what is that? Zathar asked. Survivors, Susan replied. We learned long ago that sometimes survival requires terrible choices. The massive fleet departed 2 days later. It was the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the Assembly. At its core were the human ships and officers who had transformed galactic warfare in less than a year. As his ship prepared to jump to faster than light speed, Admiral Ross looked at the stars through his viewport. He thought about how quickly humanity had adapted to this war, and wondered if they could adapt back to peace just as quickly when it was over. The final battle for the Krell homeworld lasted 7 days. The combined human assembly fleet faced fierce resistance as they pushed toward the planet. Krell ships fought with desperate intensity, knowing their survival was at stake. Admiral Ross directed the battle from his new flagship, the UES Defender. He rotated attack groups constantly, never allowing the Krell to adapt to any one strategy. Captain Paul Harris led daring raids against key defense stations. Gregory Powell's special weapons disabled Krell shields in ways they couldn't counter. By the fourth day, the outer defenses were broken. The fleet moved into orbit around the Krell homeworld. Sensors showed billions of life forms on the surface. "Their cities are unprotected," reported Sam Gordon. "We have clear shots at all major population centers." Admiral Ross was silent for a long moment. Everyone on the bridge waited for his order. The assembly representatives watched him closely, wondering what this human would do with such power. "Send a message to the Krell leadership," Ross finally said. "Tell them we want their surrender. No conditions." The message was sent, but no reply came. Hours passed. The fleet maintained position, weapons ready. "Admiral," Sam said quietly, "the Krell are moving their remaining ships into suicide attack formations. They won't surrender." Ross nodded, his face grave. "Then we have no choice. Target their military installations only. Avoid civilian areas where possible." The bombardment began. Precision strikes destroyed Krell military bases and shipyards. Some ships with assembly crews hesitated to fire, but the human commanders did not. They understood what was necessary. On the fifth day, a Krell transmission was received. Their leadership was ready to discuss terms. Admiral Ross insisted on meeting face-to-face. A small team including Ross, Susan Miller, and John Baker traveled to the surface under heavy guard. The Krell leaders were not what they expected. They were small, almost frail creatures with pale skin and large eyes. Their translators explained that the warrior Krell were a separate caste, bred specifically for combat. "Why did you attack us?" Susan asked. The Krell leader's answer was simple. "Because you were not like us. Because we have always destroyed what is different." The peace terms were harsh but fair. The Krell would surrender all warships. Their military caste would be disbanded. Assembly observers would remain on their world to ensure compliance. "If you ever threaten another world again," Admiral Ross told them, "we will return. And next time, we won't show mercy." 3 weeks later, the war was officially over. The combined fleet returned to assembly space in triumph. Celebrations erupted across human and alien worlds alike. The cost had been enormous, billions dead, dozens of planets scared by battle. But survival had been secured. At a formal ceremony on the assembly homeworld, Earth was offered full membership. No more probation, no more restrictions. Admiral Ross and Susan Miller stood before the Assembly Council as equals for the first time. "We owe our survival to humanity," Zathar announced. "Without your warriors, we would have fallen to the Krell." The council chamber filled with applause, but Susan noticed something in the eyes of many assembly representatives. Behind their gratitude was fear. Fear of what humans had shown themselves capable of. Susan was invited to speak. She stepped forward and looked out at the gathered dignitaries from 17 different species. "We humans have a complicated relationship with war," she began. "We do not love it. We do not seek it. But we remember it always. We carry it within us like an old scar." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We fear war not because we are afraid of it, but because of the beast it makes us. Because we know how quickly we can become something terrible when survival demands it. And we know how hard it is to cage that beast when peace returns." The chamber was completely silent. Susan continued, "Now the war is over. Our task is no longer to be warriors, but to be builders again. To remember how to create rather than destroy. This is also something humans know how to do." In the following months, the assembly changed. Some species began studying limited military training, not to become aggressors, but to be prepared. Human cultural practices spread through assembly worlds. The isolation that had preserved their peace for thousands of years began to fade. Captain Paul Harris stood on the observation deck of his ship, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport as they approached home. He wondered if humans would change too, if their time as the Assembly's warriors would fade from memory, or if it would always be part of them. As his crew prepared for landing, Paul realized the truth. Humans would always remember. They would always carry both the capacity for war and the desire for